Hi everyone, Teresa Aker from Success Diaries with Teresa Aker. It's my privilege today to introduce to you Michelle Butt. How you doing, Michelle?
Hey, I'm doing well, thank you.
I'm glad you're here today. I am so interested in what Michelle does. So she is a facial intelligence expert. That sounds so intriguing.
Yeah, it
So
is.
tell us what facial intelligence expert does.
What I do is I teach people, particularly coaches, leaders, healers, how to read faces to help them transform their clients' lives, communications, businesses. And so, in reading faces, what I mean is that we look at the features, markings, and wrinkles on the face to understand people's personality, their emotional responses, their decision making potential. So, all the things that are wrapped up in your typical kind of personality test actually shows up on the face.
That's fantastic. So can we start there? Can you give us some hints on some of these things? What should we be
Yeah,
looking for?
absolutely. I think the key is to understand that every feature has a meaning in terms of a personality perspective, an emotional perspective, and a life experience perspective. So, depending on what it is that you are working on someone with or what you're looking to understand about them, then you can hone in on specific features to give you clues as to what that's all about.
So you're saying in a business, perhaps business setting, when you're
Mhm.
talking to a customer or a client and you want to know what direction they're going in, is that what you mean? Am I on the right track there?
Yeah. So, for example, one of the ones that I usually give and that's really easy to spot is if we look at someone's eyebrows, one of the things that an eyebrow will tell us is what type of decision-making strategy someone uses. So,
Oh,
depending on the shape of the eyebrow, we can get a pretty good idea as to how that person will make their decision. And often, what's really important about this is that we know what our eyebrow decision making strategy perspective is, because typically the sales calls or decisions may go awry because we think the other person needs the same information the way we need it. But chances are, if their eyebrows are shaped differently, then they need to hear things differently. And
that's
once you can,
interesting. Can you tell by my eyebrows?
yes, can you lift your bangs a little
Yes, of
bit? And
course.
okay,
What would you
so
figure out from mine?
okay, just confirm for me because they're a little light. Are they rounded? They're
Rounded like this. I'll
rounded.
actually curve them for you. They're just like that. Just
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, yeah. So someone who has rounded eyebrows tends to make decisions based on what's best for all the people concerned.
Okay.
So they're a people centered decision maker. So even though they do value logic, often you can give them all the ABCs and one, two, threes. But if you don't outline, oh, and this is going to benefit this person or that person in the outcome, then you still may be hesitant. So if someone can clearly give you that, then you're like, okay, yeah, I'm in.
Oh,
Just
that's it. That's very interesting. And I do think I do make decisions based on that because I'm
yeah.
always, okay, what's in it for everybody? And is this a win-win?
Yes, exactly.
Very good. I
Exactly.
like that, Michelle. Now, let's say some people have eyebrows that kind of go pointed up. I'm
Mm.
just saying, just for a contrast,
Yep.
you see them go straight up and down. What would that represent? Could you tell us that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for example, before I go there, if you notice, my eyebrows are pretty straight,
They are.
very straight.
Absolutely.
So, as much as I love all the people in my life, really for me to make a decision, things have to make sense. So there has to be a lot of logic to it. So someone has to present all the pieces in a very orderly manner to me. And they also have to give me some time to go away and run through the logistics of everything. So if something makes sense to me, my decision perspective is, does it make sense? And have I gone through all the permutations so I can go ahead? So it's about getting things clearly. It is, if it didn't work for my husband, isn't necessarily going to be the deciding factor for me. It's, does this all make sense? Because then I can convince him because it all makes sense or whatever. That's my perspective. Knowing that about me, if I was to try to convince you of something, then I'd have to make sure I included in the logic something about the people that are important to you, because you have different eyebrows than me. And if I left that out, that may be where I would lose you sometimes.
That
And
that is so I'm thinking, why the eyebrows? So is that from experiences that you have in life where you need things to be more factual, Michelle, in your thinking when you're doing negotiations? Is that, and I'm trying to think what could, because I think most people have a little bit of everything, but you're right.
absolutely.
But you're right. I'm not as much I focused on the details, and that's the fact where you are.
Yeah, I'm focused on the logic,
Yes.
and that the logic has to make sense. I don't need all the details, but if the
Okay.
high level logic makes sense, because there are detail oriented eyebrows as well.
Oh,
But
okay.
why the eyebrows is because this work is based initially on traditional Chinese medicine. And so when thousands of years ago, they looked to the face to figure out what was going on with someone from a health perspective.
Sure.
And we still use that today in Eastern medicine. And in the mapping of the features, they map the features to systems in the body. And then they began to find that the features also mapped to personality tendencies specifically for each particular feature. Now, the eyebrows map to the liver, so they reflect the health of the liver, both physically and the emotional liver, which is the filtering of information, because the liver is our filtering organ. So that's why eyebrows typically will give us a good idea about decision making, because we're filtering information. And that is, so everything is connected, which is really beautiful about this work, because
Right.
if you've got something going on with their liver, physically, it may also reflect some of your emotional positioning, affect the way you're able to make decisions. It may be as a result of something that you're going through that's giving you an inability to process information because you're overwhelmed or whatever. So this work spans the gamut of how we move through our life and helps us to connect with others and ourselves on a different level.
That is so fascinating. Because I know parts of the body are connected to other parts, and your energy and your skeletal, if you would say. So that does interest me, and that I'm sure certainly interests the viewers as well. How did you get into something like this, Michelle?
Oh, many years ago, wow, 15, 16 years ago now, I had just started a coaching practice, and I was trained in, still am, but I was trained in NLP, timeline therapy, hypnotherapy. So I was beginning to see clients, and they were coming to me, and I was doing all the protocols that we were given, and yet people still weren't getting the results that I believe they should have been getting with all the things that we were doing. So I started to think, is there something going on that people want me to know, but they can't tell me? They just don't have the ability to articulate it, or they don't even know themselves. And is there another way to see what's going on with people in order to help them? And so I wandered through a bookstore, and I came across a book on Chinese face reading, and I picked it up and I started to read it, and I thought, okay, this is the missing piece. The face will tell us what's going on with someone in a way that they may not be able to articulate yet, but they do want us to know, because we give our faces to everybody everywhere we go. Even on social media, we post pictures all the time. So that began my foray into understanding face reading from a Chinese medicine perspective. And then I did some body language work and communication work, and my degree is in linguistics. So I really thought, how do we modernize the TCM approach to the modern day man, woman, person in terms of our struggles and how we need to communicate and what is important for us to see and articulate in order to continue to use this agent tool in our modern world. And that's where facial intelligence came around, and the nomenclature and way in which I describe it is different than many years ago, but it's still the same
Yeah, because
base.
as you indicated, it would have been a health benefit before to see what the person's going through. I'm thinking, as you were saying, that perhaps people like interrogation officers may use it,
Mm,
different professions may use it as well as the health industry. Does
yes.
that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's why my primary client are coaches and leaders, and
Right.
because they are the ones who are helping people communicate and work through their things. And leaders influence teams. When you understand the perspective of everyone in front of you, then you can communicate differently in order to achieve the result that you want to achieve.
Do you work with like an organization as a whole or a one-on-one?
Typically, I work with coaches who are entrepreneurs and solopreneurs. I also do trainings in corporations for leadership, or I run workshops at conferences and things like that.
So when you're teaching someone, they're learning about these skills. And do they utilize them quite often? And when I say that, I know you have a successful business. Is this something that most people can do, or is this something they need more time to learn?
Everyone is an unconscious face reader, so we all pick up clues. But in order to
Sure.
do it consciously and strategically, once you learn it, then it just takes time to keep applying it. So usually when I teach my Face Talk Foundations, that's a 12-week course.
Oh,
If I
okay.
go into corporate, it can, depending on how in depth they want to learn, it could be 1 day, 3 days, 5 days, because there is some interaction and workshopping where you look at faces and you try to understand things, and there are scenarios and things like that.
And I can understand where leaders would benefit from this because now you're working
Hmm.
with your team and
Hmm.
you're learning how each one individually, that you know how they interact, but you're not quite sure why they interact that way. And now you can see past that and say, okay, this person needs a little more time, or this one's going through something, or this one's holding back. So I can see how that would definitely benefit the leaders in businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, for example, if we're just even focusing on the eyebrow area, it's such a robust place of information on the face. The space between the eyebrows lets us know how well someone works with others. A nice big space means that you're able to tolerate a lot of personalities and interact with a lot of different people. That's what you have, and you run this podcast and you're listening to different people all the time, and it gives this ability to move within a bigger working dynamic.
But I might add, you also have that white, because I'm looking at yours and you also
Yeah.
have that. So that's a talent that you obviously have. And you're very personable.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I see that yours are wide as well in there.
And but if someone has a really thin space, then that is someone who would prefer to work autonomously,
Right.
and just you'd say, okay, here, do your thing. And they might not necessarily do well in the team. Not that they don't know how to play. It's just it's more stress for them. They don't have that filtering
Right.
ability. And so if you're, say, a leader in a corporation, if you can look at the faces of the people on your team and understand that, then maybe the person with the shorter space between, you give them a project that they can work on their own and only have to
Right.
check in now and then, instead of leading a whole group, because that's going to be more stressful for them and it may not be the best use of their skills. So this way you can also help match a person into the right role in a team just by understanding the messages in their various features.
Now, what about, so we have wrinkle lines and we have stress lines when you're stressed, and you have surprise face, things like that. Do you work with that as well, where someone maybe is under a lot of stress, maybe down a bit. Do you look at that sort of thing as well?
Oh, yeah, wrinkles are very important in understanding our emotional habits.
Right,
So the wrinkle really reflects the face you're making, and the longer we live, the more time we get to make a face, but it's our habitual face that is reflecting the way we think and feel.
right.
And so, depending on where the wrinkle shows up, and then we can understand what kind of stress it is, or maybe it isn't stress, maybe it's just a lesson learned, and that's feedback that you want to get every time you're in the mirror so that you don't have to keep relearning a lesson over and over again. So the wrinkles, especially from a coaching perspective, really help us to understand someone's mindset and emotional habit to know what's serving them or what's not serving them in their
I'm looking at your face as you're talking. You hardly have any. So that
life.
tells me you've got a real happy life, don't you?
I do, but also I think that the some facial archetypes will wrinkle more than others
Sure.
because they are more internally focused, and so they don't express their feelings on their face as much. And sometimes the emotional thought patterns show up in different ways, so they can show up in changes in features, so maybe thinning of lips or eyebrows, or a fuller face, or so it just depends on what we're seeing and where we're seeing it.
That's what I have, thinning eyebrows. And I know that. Like I know it's a very, oh yeah, I have those thinning. So what does that tell me?
It may be that your ability to hold lots of conversation, that's not the right thing. No. Sorry, I'm just trying to get
No,
it
that's
for
okay. I just
you.
wonder because you happened to mention that. So I thought I'll go with
Yeah,
what the heck.
your ability to filter a lot of different personalities, potentially
Oh,
even in your personal life as opposed to your business life necessarily, is more taxed as you have moved through life. So you're going to be a little bit more discerning as to what you bring in that is going to cause you to have to focus outside of yourself.
oh,
Does
that's
that make sense?
interesting. Yes, that's very interesting. Well done. And for
Yeah.
yourself, you have the nice shape, the darker, you don't have thin, lighter eyebrows. So you have, what does that indicate for me if I was working with you?
Well, I,
Because yours are quite pretty. They're dark and you don't have the lighter eyebrows. So what does that tell me about you personally?
the color just depends on hair color. So if I was right in front of you and we could see better, then I could potentially see the thickness, because even blonde eyebrows, if they're still thick, they're there.
Oh yeah, they're there. They're just
Yeah, yeah. It right now for me, it means that I still have that strength of filtering. So in terms of drama and lots of personalities and all of that, I'm still able to do that. Probably because I still have 4 teenage kids. So,
yeah.
but it also just means that innately, so each feature is associated with an archetype of personality and strength. So it means for me, innately, I have the eyebrows are associated with the warrior personality. Innately, I have potentially more warrior reserves right now.
Oh,
So I have the ability to do the kind of leadership and the managing of people and personalities that is needed for the stage in life that I'm in, both personally and professionally. Now, everybody has each archetype in different reserves based on their full face.
sure.
So you may be less warrior and more something else. So potentially more captivator, which is someone who is very people centered and open hearted and open to having lots of conversations and being front and center. And in that strength of archetype, because that is so out there, it could deplete the warrior that has to be thinking and working all the time. So
Oh,
each
that's
of the
interesting.
archetypes play into each other as well.
And you can use that in the benefit as a leadership situation where you're putting people together where one is stronger and one is weaker in another area, but can pick up the other side. I can see that as well. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. So typically you put your captivators, so the ones who are really good in the spotlight and
Sure.
really charming and personable, they're really good as the salespeople or the people who are front and center with clients. And your strategists may want to be more in the background because dealing with people will distract them from looking at all the ins and outs of things that have to be done.
And
So,
there is a need in every company to have someone in the background taking care of incidentals that have to be taken care of, because I can say, as someone who's very out there and who works with the public and who does that, I may not be as controlled analytically. So I need that help. I need the background. And in order to keep the company going, you need the sales staff and you need them present in front of the customer. So that makes absolute sense. And if you're a leader that wants to learn this, now you can take your team and have a dynamic super team, putting them in the areas they're best benefited for. So that's terrific. Honestly, Michelle.
yeah, absolutely. It's so important to understand what people's faces are telling you about their strengths
Sure.
because everyone can do anything. But when you put someone in a place where they're drawing on what their features are telling you is their innate strength anyway, you just allow them to shine and be less depleted than if they were someone said to you, okay, you sit down and you figure out all these numbers, instead of saying to you, you go and you greet the people
Right.
and have conversations and come back to us and tell us what's important to them. That's more where you belong than sitting behind a desk crunching the numbers. That's for somebody else,
And that's
even
a
though you may
fact.
be good at it. Yeah.
No, that's a fact. I am not good at that.
Yeah.
That's why I have a
Yeah.
bookkeeper, because it's the fact. I'm just not. I can't even, to sit at a desk all day is just not my personality. And you can tell that. I
Yeah.
know you can. And I can tell that you're more logical and your way of expressing yourself is entirely different. I can see that. However, we both coming from the same benefits and the same projects, we could actually do a great job together. And I can see that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then once you understand that, then you understand how to support
Yeah.
each person. Because if you have someone who needs to be in the spotlight and they're not, then even if the work doesn't necessarily support that, you can spotlight them somehow once a day or something to give them that boost that they need so that they feel seen and then they can continue to do what they need to do. We don't all get to be in a perfect job for us, but you can still motivate people in a way that makes them feel okay, this is what I need, and so I will continue. Because often people get disgruntled or discouraged at their work because they're just not seen, even though the work that they're doing isn't necessary, can't be any more glamorous than it is, but there's still ways to acknowledge people in the way they need to be acknowledged.
So an award system or a bonus system works with some people very well, where it doesn't
Mhm.
matter to other people. It just depends on their personality as well. Would that make sense?
Yeah.
Motivate.
So, for example, if you've got a bunch of people who work in a call center, you're going to have all different faces
Mhm.
working there. But so, someone who's lots of captivator like you may want to make it a point if you're the leader to come by and say, "Hey, how you doing? I love your lipstick," and just honor that you see them. You may have another person who has a nice round, full face that's very nurture, and they need appreciation. It might be that you go by and just say, thank you for always being on time and staying a little bit extra, because that will be the person that will do that. And once they notice that, they don't necessarily need a bonus, they need the appreciation. You might have somebody else who says, I did this thing, now I need a win. So you're like, oh, you met your numbers? Here's a movie ticket for you. And
Right.
because they're more transactional. So all of once you understand the faces, then you also know how to motivate people and keep them happy and fulfilled, even if what they do is just mundane. But then people feel like they're seen as an individual and not just a cog in a big wheel.
Excellent. You were very concise and very clear on how this all works. So thank you so much for that. Now, Michelle, do you have a company name that we can bring forward, or is it Michelle? But what are you using as your company name?
I do. My company is called At Face Value, but typically you can get everything you need just at michellebutt.com.
At michellebutt.com. Perfect. And I have one more question, actually two more.
Sure.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years, Michelle?
Oh my goodness. I see myself continuing to do this wonderful work that I do, but probably from a beach somewhere.
Ooh, I
So,
like that. Very
yeah,
nice. So you have a
yeah,
plan. This is good.
we have a plan. Yes, we do.
Where the mind goes, the body follows, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so, Michelle, one more question. I had a wonderful time with you today. Would you come back and talk to us again?
Absolutely, for sure. Yes.
Thank you, because you really, truly, you laid it all out, and I have so many more questions we could roll with. And I'm sure there'll be some viewers that have some questions for you. I truly
Yeah.
appreciated your coming on today. You're very personable. You answered all the questions, and I truly appreciate that, Michelle.
Oh, you're very welcome. Oh, and just to tell you, people with peaked eyebrows, they're quick decision makers, so they can make decisions more quickly.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you for
Hmm.
filling that part in. You're right.
Yeah.
So that, okay, good to know. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of, see, we're going to, when you come back, we'll have all new questions.
Absolutely. There's more features on the face to talk about.
Perfect. I'm happy to do that. Thank you again, Michelle. It truly
Oh,
was
you're
a
very
pleasure to have
welcome.
you today. And to everyone else, this is Teresa Aker from Success Diaries with Teresa Aker. Subscribe to my channel. I truly appreciate that. Go ahead and go to Michelle's social media pages and her webpage and ask her all the questions you like, or you can ask me and I'll make sure she has the answers. I hope you're having a great day, and I look forward to talking to you all very soon.